Redfall Game Review. Arriving to play 90 minutes of Redfall. I am surprised to find out I won't be getting to try it out in co-op. Everything leading up to launch seems to have emphasized this as an experience to be shared. Your team of 4 combining their vampire hunting abilities and specialties to fight back against the forces of darkness. It's designed as much for solo as multiplayer. You can play it however you want. It's just a different experience alone or as a pair. It's a little slower and more strategic, whereas with 3 or 4 it's fast-paced and chaotic. But by the end of my session, I'm left worried that doesn't ring true. I think the unfortunate reality may be that Redfall is caught between two identities, lacking something when played alone, but not well suited for playing with friends either. After picking one of the 4 heroes, head straight out into the open world. Redfall's setting is an island in Massachusetts, a slice of small-town Americana somewhat spoiled by an invasion of vampires and their minions. Not only have they seemingly wiped out the population, they are warping the world around them. The river has dried up. The sky is an unsettling color, and weird energies shimmer around their layers. It's a sharply rendered world, but from a studio as stylish as Arcane, it does feel like it's missing something. Deathloop and particularly Dishonored are wonderfully striking to look at. With such rich environmental world building, their settings are immediately memorable. Redfall feels mundane by comparison. Despite the vampire threat, predominantly what you are looking at is normal, present-day buildings and streets, and the art style, though colorful and pleasant, isn't distinctive enough to elevate them. Blood simple. As I start to explore, that feeling's compounded by the strange lifelessness of the town. I don't have to follow the main plot. I can just wander and see what I discover. But when I give that a try, what I find is not a lot. There are little groups of enemies standing around in various spots, ready to come after me if I stray too close. But there's precious little to really interact with. Almost all the buildings I poke around inside are simply bare. No items to pick up, nothing to see, no signs of life other than bloodsuckers and cultists. Eventually I discover a nest, a sort of pocket dimension where vampires like to chill. Just the presence of the weird doorway to this realm empowers enemies around it, making it a good idea to get rid of any you find. You do that by stepping in, blasting away the monsters inside, and destroying the creepy giant heart at their center. The topsy-turvy world inside the nest feels like a glimpse at that more creative and exuberant side of Arcane. It's a sort of twisted reflection of the town, shadowy streets and buildings crushed together into a claustrophobic tunnel to the heart. Once I reach the huge, abominable organ, I have to break its tendrils away from unfortunate victims being drained of their vital fluids, before blasting it into a cloud of red smoke. Then it's a race to hoover up loot before the dimension collapses, throwing me back out to the real world. It's a great concept, a sort of nightmarish take on clearing out bandit camps. But in practice these nest excursions are lacking in excitement. After pretty easily blasting 3 or so vampires, I'm free to just stroll up to the heart, where no climactic confrontation awaits me. Just have to go to each tendril and press a button, then shoot the heart a couple of times, and that's it. This is the problem I have throughout. There is nothing here to get my adrenaline flowing. In combat, the shooting feels good, and there is a nice selection of guns to choose from, including more esoteric options like a stake launcher and a UV beam. But enemies don't put up an interesting fight, and there seems to be little strategic meat. There is stealth, and you can approach enemy encampments from different angles. But none of it really adds up to much more depth than shooting explosive barrels when cultists stand conveniently next to them. So long, suckers. The vampires are the worst offenders. Floating menacingly in the air and rushing at me to claw me. They at first seem thrilling, but once I pump a few shotgun blasts into them, I realize how weightless they really are. Easy to put down, feral in their behavior, and usually found just kind of aimlessly hanging about with cultists. They have none of the grandeur or menace you want from a supernatural foe like this. They feel more like flying attack dogs. Once downed with a few shots, they flop helplessly to the ground, where you have to stake them to finish them off. It should be a cathartic moment, take that, you creature of the night. But they are such limp enemies that it feels more like having to clean up after yourself. The whole game really hangs on the idea that these guys are both scary and exciting to fight. And from what I play, they just aren't. My last hope for an adrenaline rush is the anger of the vampire gods as you slay bloodsuckers. The game regularly informs you that you are annoying their deities, which slowly fills up a big red bar. Take a break, and it'll drain slowly, though I have no idea what you'd spend that time doing. But keep fighting and it'll eventually summon a miniboss to put you down. When I incur their wrath, and a hulking beast called the Rook is summoned to slay me, it's at the worst possible time. I have just arrived at the mansion housing my first proper story mission, and it's already well defended. His arrival is heralded by arcane storms, forcing me to stay on the move. Checkmate. As I sprint around the mansion's grounds, dodging lightning bolts and vampires while I try to get a read on the Rook, it briefly seems like I have found the real meat of the game. A couple of tentative shots reveal a health bar that's certainly not going to go down as quickly as his chums, and his claws deal serious damage. But the more I fight him, the more I'll realize he is just another attack dog, only with more health and damage. He's still capable of nothing more than charging at me, then floating gomlessly around when he misses. It just takes longer to chip him down, and if this is the extent of the Dark God's divine judgment, then I don't think I'll be converting. Deflated, I work my way through a fairly bland story mission. It's mostly a hunt for a long list of items in the mansion, and makes stealth or strategy irrelevant because I end up having to clear out every room. There is no climactic moment when find the last object, and even the writing feels half-hearted as it spins me a tropey yarn about a scientist driven to unethical experiments by his daughter's mysterious illness. As I end my time with the game, I'm left wondering how much my adventure was hobbled by a lack of co-op buddies. With enemy numbers and difficulty scaled up, would fights feel more dangerous and exciting? Would our abilities open up more strategic options? Would multiplayer chaos fill the strange emptiness? At the same time, I can already see the problems LD be running into in co-op. Will multiplayer sessions feel loose and aimless, without properly paced encounters and climactic moments? How can co-op play settle into a satisfying rhythm? Redfall feels quiet and empty alone, but I'm not sure it's a world I'm keen to pull my friends into either. Developed during the pandemic and other change and upheaval at the studio, and surely shaped by Arcane's struggle to find mainstream commercial success with its excellent immersive sims, Redfall seems to me to bear the scars of a troubled development. I can only hope didn't get to see its best side. But all I can say is that after an hour and a half with its vampire enemies, not once did it get my blood pumping.